Hey everyone, welcome back. So many of you wanted to know more about AI and children's rights, and, well, you know we love to go deep.
Uh-huh.
So we dug into this report. It's from a Turkish legal group, really interesting stuff. And they are all about AI issues.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, it's pretty eye-opening how much AI is already part of kids' lives, even in ways we don't always think about, like everything from, the education apps to the healthcare they're getting.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how the report dives into both the potential benefits and also the risks, all the possible risks that come along with these technologies, especially, thinking about how they affect kids.
That's the thing. They don't just gloss over those risks.
Mm.
They actually give some pretty real-world examples, like AI toys that, get this, had security flaws so bad that kids' conversations were leaked online.
Oh, wow.
And then there's the whole issue of AI in education, how if we're not super careful, it could actually make existing biases even worse.
Mm-hmm.
It even gets into this idea of next-generation rights, like we need a whole new set of children's rights just for the age of AI. So much to unpack here. I mean, where do we even begin with all of this?
Well, I think it might surprise some folks that the report starts by talking about the good that AI can do for kids. They highlight a few specific areas where it's, already making a positive difference.
Yeah, like in education, they talk about that Newton software, right?
Right.
That personalizes learning to each student's needs. I mean, just imagine every kid getting lessons that are actually tailored just for them. Talk about powerful stuff.
Right,
But
right.
then it makes you think, where does that leave teachers in all of this? Do they become more like facilitators?
Yeah.
And what about standardized testing? Does that even make sense anymore in this world of personalized learning?
Those are all great questions. And the report, it does touch on how we might need to rethink some of those traditional educational models when we bring these technologies into the mix. It also talks about how AI can be used in healthcare, especially for early detection of certain conditions like autism. And the idea is that the sooner a child can be diagnosed and get the support they need, the better their chances of really thriving.
That's huge.
Yeah. And it's pretty amazing how AI can analyze, these really subtle cues and patterns, things that humans might miss altogether. And that can lead to faster interventions and better outcomes for kids.
Like AI can see things we can't.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of how it can be such a force for good.
Right.
But then there's the flip side. Like the report makes this point. It's actually kind of chilling when you think about it. It says the digital world, like all of it, it wasn't designed with kids in mind.
Yeah.
And that leaves them vulnerable in ways I think we're just starting to grasp.
Exactly. It's almost like we're giving a child a powerful tool, but without the safety instructions.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we got to celebrate the possibilities, of course, but we have to be mindful of the potential downsides.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the biggest risks, as the report points out, is this whole issue of data privacy.
Oh, for sure. I mean, we all know AI systems are like data-hungry machines. And kids, let's face it, they're generating tons of data every single day.
Yeah.
But here's the thing that really freaks me out. It's often collected without them even knowing, let alone understanding what's happening to it. And this report, it gets us to some pretty disturbing ways that data could be misused.
Right. Like they point out how this data can be used to profile children, to target them with, ads that are designed to exploit their vulnerabilities. They could even track their online behavior, every click, every like, every comment, and create these incredibly detailed records that could follow them for years.
Right.
I mean, think about that, decisions are being made about a child based on data that was collected when they were like 10 years old and just playing a game or chatting with their friends.
It's pretty unsettling.
Yeah, to say the least.
And it makes you think about, that whole Cloud Pets toy situation. Remember those?
Oh, yeah.
Millions of kids' private conversations just out there because of a security flaw.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that story still gives me chills because it shows you how vulnerable this data can be.
Right.
And then it makes you wonder, what about the right to be forgotten? Like, how can a child control their digital footprint when AI is constantly scooping up and storing all this information?
Right. That's a huge question. And the report, one of their suggestions is to classify all data related to children as special category personal data under laws like, the GDPR.
Okay.
So that would mean, much stricter regulations around how that data can be collected, stored, and used in the first place.
Okay. It's kind of like giving kids' data extra protection.
Exactly, yeah. Because they need it.
Yeah. Speaking of vulnerable systems, what about AI in education? I mean, we touched on the good stuff, the personalized learning and all.
Right.
But this report also gets real about how AI could actually make existing inequalities even worse.
Right. And I think it all comes down to the data that's used to train these AI systems,
And what's
right?
changing
If
daily?
that data reflects, existing biases, then the algorithms will too.
Yeah.
And that could lead to some kids being unfairly disadvantaged from the start.
It's not hard to imagine like an AI system that's been trained on biased data.
Hmm.
It ends up, steering certain kids towards like vocational tracks while others are guided towards college prep. And it's all based on stuff they can't even control.
Right.
That's a terrifying thought.
Yeah. And the report doesn't stop there. It also talks about how AI could make the digital divide even wider. If only some kids have access to these amazing learning tools, then we're basically creating a two-tiered education system.
That's a sobering thought. It reminds that, AI isn't some magic wand.
Right.
We can't just throw it at problems and expect everything to be fixed. We have to be really intentional about how we use it if we want it to benefit all children, not just a select few.
Yeah, absolutely. It really comes down to fairness, doesn't it? Like, everyone should have a fair chance to succeed no matter what their background is.
Yeah.
But that also means we got to think about how to use these technologies to actually protect kids, not just teach them stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And this report, it dives right into that whole issue of like internet safety in the age of algorithms. Because on the one hand, AI can be this awesome tool for shielding kids from like the worst of the web, right? Things like child exploitation or any kind of content that's just totally inappropriate.
Absolutely. It's like, think of AI as a digital guardian, right? Constantly scanning all those dark corners of the internet, looking for dangers and trying to keep kids safe. But there's a flip side, a big one, because the same algorithms that protect kids can also be the ones that put them at risk.
It's a total double-edged sword. The report, it highlights how easily those recommendation algorithms can send kids down some really dark paths, suggesting stuff that's related to self-harm or eating disorders, things that, no child should ever have to see.
And it's not just about the content itself. These algorithms, they can also be incredibly good at encouraging addictive behaviors. Things like endless scrolling on social media or spending hours and hours playing video games, even spending habits, getting out of control. The report, it points out how these systems are designed to keep us hooked. And kids, their brains are still developing, right? They're especially vulnerable to these tactics.
It's scary, isn't it? Like these algorithms know exactly which buttons to push, how to tap into our desires and fears just to keep us glued to our screens.
It really is. And it's a global concern. Remember, the report even mentions how the Italian Data Protection Authority, they actually banned ChatGPT for a while.
Yeah.
That was a big deal. They were worried about kids' data privacy and the possibility of them, being exposed to content that's just not appropriate for their age. And the fact that this actually pushed ChatGPT to, implement age verification measures, it kind of shows you that these concerns are being taken seriously, at least by some.
Okay, so it's a small step, but at least it's something. It shows that if enough people push back, maybe these tech companies will actually start thinking about the well-being of children.
Right.
But, all this, it brings us back to this big point that the report keeps hammering home. It's this idea that we need a whole new way of thinking about children's rights in the digital age. Like they call them next generation, children's rights.
It's such a fascinating concept. The report talks about how we need rights that are specifically designed to address all the unique challenges that come with AI. For example, they talk about the right to child inclusion, meaning like kids should actually have a say in how these AI systems are designed and developed.
Which makes total sense, right? It's their future that's on the line, isn't it? We shouldn't just treat them like passive recipients of all this. They need to be active participants in the conversation. But how do we even do that? How do we make sure their voices are actually heard and taken seriously?
That's the question. The report, it talks about creating, platforms for feedback that are specifically designed for kids, ways to get them involved in the design process from the beginning. They even talk about appointing like child advocates who would represent their interests in policy discussions. It's all about recognizing that kids are stakeholders in their own digital futures.
I love that. And then there's that whole idea of child oversight, right? Basically having systems in place to like keep an eye on the impact AI is having on kids' well-being, making sure their rights aren't being violated. But then, who would actually do that monitoring? And how could they even keep up with all this technology? It's changing so fast.
Right? Those are some big questions. The report, some of the things they suggest are creating like independent bodies whose job is to monitor the impact of AI on children specifically, and then also doing regular audits of AI systems, like the ones that are used in schools or by companies that are targeting kids, and of course developing clear guidelines, maybe even regulations for how AI should be developed ethically. It's a tall order, but it's super important if we want to make sure that AI serves children, instead of the other way around.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we can't forget about that idea of child agency, that kids should have the power to make their own informed choices about how they interact with AI.
That's a big one. It's all about empowering kids to really understand how these systems work, to critically evaluate all the information they're bombarded with online, and then to make choices that are aligned with their own values and interests. It's about teaching them digital literacy and critical thinking skills from a young age.
So it's not about trying to shield them from the digital world completely.
No.
It's about giving them the tools to navigate it, safely and confidently. The report also talks about that right to explainability in AI.
Right. The idea that AI shouldn't just be a black box, right? Children should have the right to understand how these systems work, how they make decisions that affect them. It's about transparency and accountability.
It's not just about protection. It's about empowering them. And they even talk about UNICEF's framework for child-centered AI. They have 9 key principles to guide people who are developing or using AI with kids.
And it's a global call to action, this report. Coming from a Turkish legal group, it reminds us that these issues, they aren't just, Western concerns, they're universal. It's something that everyone should be paying attention to. And we need, global collaboration, a shared commitment to making sure that AI benefits all children, no matter where they live.
It's a good reminder that this conversation is just getting started. There's still so much to explore, so much to figure out. What are your thoughts? What's really standing out to you as we've been talking about all of this?
Honestly, what strikes me most is how complex this whole thing is. It's not just about the tech. It's about ethics and human rights and, the kind of future we want to build for these kids.
You're so right. It's like we're trying to figure out what childhood even means in this digital age. And that's a huge responsibility. It feels like we're standing at a fork in the road with all of this,
Yeah.
We have this incredible technology and it has so much potential for good.
Right.
But we got to make sure we're using it in a way that actually protects kids, and helps them thrive.
It really does feel like we're at the beginning of a whole new frontier, and we have this chance to do it right. To create a path that benefits everyone, but especially the kids.
Yeah.
But to do that, I think we got to be really thoughtful, really proactive, and willing to have some tough conversations.
And that's what I think is so great about this report.
Yeah.
It doesn't shy away from the hard questions. It throws down a challenge. Remember that whole idea of next generation children's rights?
Yeah.
They really want us to think about what rights kids are going to need in this age of AI. What new rights?
Right. And they don't just throw that idea out there and leave it. They actually offer some really concrete suggestions, like the right to child inclusion, the right to child oversight, the right to child agency, the right to explainability. I mean, these are big ideas. They could really change how we think about AI and children.
And it's not just about protecting kids. It's about equipping them so they can actually thrive in this world, making sure they have the knowledge and the skills to navigate the digital landscape and to do it safely and responsibly.
It's about raising a generation of digital citizens, kids who are informed, who are empowered, who are actually capable of shaping the future of technology. Imagine a world where kids aren't just, passively consuming AI, but they're the ones creating it, innovating with it, pushing for its ethical development.
That's amazing. And it starts by actually recognizing that kids are stakeholders, that their future is tied to all of this. We got to listen to them, we got to take them seriously, and we got to give them a real voice in how all this stuff is shaped.
Yeah.
In the policies, the technologies, all of it.
Absolutely. And that's where education is so crucial. We need to be teaching kids about AI, starting young. Not just, the technical stuff, but the ethics, the impact on society, the potential for good, and also the potential for harm. We got to help them become critical thinkers, to question assumptions, to stand up for their own rights in this digital world.
So here we are, end of our deep dive. We covered a lot, didn't we? I mean, we talked about the good that AI can do for kids, but also about the very real risks. We looked at how we might need to rethink children's rights in this digital age, and we touched on how important it is to, educate kids, empower them, make sure everybody's included.
It's been a great conversation. I hope it's gotten everyone thinking, thinking more deeply about all of this.
We really do. And to that end, we want to leave you with one last thing to think about. If you could create a brand new right, a children's right, just for the age of AI, what would it be? What would be the most fundamental right to make sure kids are protected, empowered, and able to thrive in this world that's changing so fast? Take some time to really think about that one. It's a question worth pondering. The future of AI, is being written right now. And the decisions we're making today, those are going to have a huge impact on the generations to come.
That's the truth.
So keep asking those tough questions. Keep learning. Keep pushing for a future where AI is used to make the world a better place for all kids. Until next time, keep diving deep.